Now let me start the recording. Okay, now the class is being recorded, guys. Okay, now I was talking about security, right? What's the reason why you should be a database administrator and you don't have control over your environment? You need to know who are those accessing this database. Do they have permission? Well, they should have permission, but what level of permission do they have? You should have people that can only access database and read. For example, when you create a bank account, you become a user of a particular database, but you have a read-only access to the database, not a read and write access to the database. That falls under security. You should be able to do encryption of your database, right? This is a very beautiful technology, TDE, transparent data encryption, right? You use this to encrypt a database. You also have another technology called always encrypted. Well, this technology makes sure that whoever is reading the data, the data is encrypted, and we do have what is called encryption at rest, meaning that even when the data is saved somewhere on the disk or on the drive, that data is encrypted. If you steal a copy of that database, right, you will still not be able to restore because it was encrypted. So that's what transparent data encryption stands for. And always encrypted helps you to encrypt data in the fly. When you are reading data from one machine to another, while its data is going through the air from one location to another, it is also encrypted. We call it encryption in fly. That's always encrypted. And we have row level data masking. All of you who know about data masking, you might not know that it's called data masking, but it is data masking. Most of the forms that you fill, like for example, official documents, where you have to put in your social security number. That column is always, if there is anyone reading that database that has social security number column, that database has what is called dynamic data masking, which hides the first few digits of your social security number and only shows you the last four. That is why, because when you store your social security, there are a lot of companies here that they are by law authorized to read that database. For example, your landlord can read the database. Your bank, when you go in to sign sign for a mortgage, all these kinds of companies, they have the right to read the database, but they are not allowed to see the entire data on the database. And then you implement these kinds of encryption called dynamic data masking, which helps to encrypt certain portions of the database, making sure that the user still access it. They can fully authenticate that you are who you claim to be that you are, right? These are technologies that you use on daily basis, but you really don't know that that's what it is. But in this class, you're going to learn all that. And then we'll move on.
Doctor.
Yes.
Is there any difference between data encryption and data masking?
Yes, there is a difference. Well, the data masking is you mask certain portion of the database, not the entire database. It's just certain portion. You go to a column and you decide that, okay, I'm going to mask the first 6 characters of this database, right? Which means that if you only have dynamic data masking on the database and someone steals a copy, he or she will still be able to restore the database, but the data will still be encrypted. The first 6 digits will still be encrypted. But when you do transparent data encryption, you encrypt the entire database. If someone steals a copy, that individual cannot restore it. All right? So that's where the difference comes in. And then we have very beautiful technologies that every single one of you should know this, called high availability solutions. SQL Server, this is where SQL Server markets himself, right? On providing solutions like this, where a company can tell you, no matter what happens, I don't want my database to go down. It should always be available. And you have things like New York Stock Exchange. Think about the database of a New York Stock Exchange. There is no way that database can go down even for 1 second. It's impossible, because that is a business that people rely on, and it changes in seconds. So the moment the database goes down for 1 second for New York Stock Exchange, the world thinks millions of money are at stake. So they cannot do that. So if you are a database administrator and you work for a company like that, you cannot afford to have database go down even for 1 second. And you have to use technologies like this. High availability solutions that comes with failover clustering, database mirroring, always on, and all those kinds of things like that. Those are technologies that you have to put in place to ensure that in a twinkle of an eye, if I have a database sitting on in a server in Houston, and for some reason there's a flood in Houston, the entire data center is flooded. In a twinkle of an eye, I have a copy of that database somewhere in Arizona that spins up and starts serving application users without users even noticing that something happened, right? That's how fast it is. And these technologies, they switch in less than 15 seconds. They're able to switch from one location to another, and then it starts working on. And when you even go into cloud-based technologies, these solutions, they provide solutions that will ensure that a database cannot go down for more than 3 microseconds in a year, right? That's when you start talking about things like availability, 99.99. After 99, you have 16 nines. The number of nines that you have after 99 determines how long a database can go down in an entire year. And you're going to learn that when time comes up. You see that the more the number of nines you provide, the higher your database can be up in an entire year, right? So technologies like that, which you guys are going to explore, looks into that. And then you have 26, which talks about performance tuning. Everybody wants things to go fast. If you go online, you log onto your website, you click submit, and it takes 20 minutes to log you on. None of you will be happy here. You want things to go fast. When you click submit, it submits, and then the moment you submit, you're online. You want to have things that work like that. So under performance tuning, that's the kinds of things that we do there. We try to see how can we make things go fast for you. Every company wants speed, because speed, time is money, right? Let's say you finish this program and you decide to create your own company, and your company actually deals with, you create a data center, right? You've talked with a couple of people, you're able to create a data center, and you host applications on the data center. So the clients that are coming to you, they're expecting that when they run the application, that the response time to be very fast. So if you come up with databases that are poorly designed, the response time is very slow, you're going to be out of business in less than no time. So performance tuning, the kinds of things that you need to look into to make sure that your database functions the way it's designed. And that ends the first part of this program, which is really the fundamentals of this program, right? Once we're done with this, we're done with the fundamentals, then comes the real work. Now, what are we going to do when we're done with the fundamentals? We're going to create you guys a corporate world environment, and that's why I talked about the fact that you need to have a laptop that meets the specification. A corporate world environment will help you to be able to build a laptop that replicates exactly what you have at work. And we do that. This costs a lot of money for companies. If you get a consultant to come into your company and build a lab environment for you, you are not talking less than $10,000 plus to pay that person. Those people, they charge them $500 per hour and above. But in this class, by the time you are leaving this class, you should be able to build this corporate world environment at any time. If I wake you up at 12 midnight, you should be able to wake up and build that. It's important because you know those things and you can do it, and it's good for you because once you start working, you should have an environment at home that replicates what you have at work, so that when you get a project and you really don't know what to do, you have the Tuesday program that you can bring in here and we can look at it for you, or you can literally go to your lab environment and test that. Practice it over and over before the class, before you get back to work. So when you get back to work, you are barely implementing what you've already done. So it's important that you know this. So we're going to do that. We virtualize your environment, you create virtual machine, we virtualize the drives, the network, the storage, and then we build domain controller, we build an Active Directory, we build DNS, and we build clusters, and then we start our projects, right? So we need to build this in order to do all these projects. So all these projects, we're going to work on all these projects, and when we're done with this, we are going to go on to interview project, right? Where you guys will have a capstone project, working teams, and present it. And during the presentation, we have a whole commission of 6 DBAs, senior level DBAs, that will question you on things that you've done throughout this program. It's not a joking matter. We take this extremely serious, right? So you are going to spend weeks working on this capstone project because it's not an easy project. But the project that you work on are things that you've been doing in a corporate world. And I can open my work environment, go through my ticketing system, and you will see it word for word. It's the same thing that you will be required to do at work that we do here in class. So it's important that you really take this project very, very, very important, right? So that's how the program is structured. And we're going to start up today. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes for questions. Then we're going to take a 15 minutes break. And when we come back, we're going to start on chapter 2, which is SQL Server Overview. Any question, please? I know I am an extremely fast speaker, so sometimes I am too fast to even understand myself. So please calm me down when you see me going at the speed of light, right? So I know that I'm a fast speaker. Yes.
I was going to ask about does this course take us up to any certification? I thought I saw something under the books, but I didn't remember if you just keep that or maybe for the last or something.
Yes. So this book prepares you to write. What we do here, we provide you knowledge and materials to be able to take the certification, but we do not really handle certification classes. But we guide you on the type of certification you want to take. And like I mentioned during the orientation, certification is not my priority in this class, in this program. It's not my priority. I know that certifications are important, but my goal is that you get jobs. Because once you have a job, you can take the certificate. You can even ask your company to help you pay for the certification. So I focus mostly on you getting a job than the certification. But if you want to take the certification, we can provide you guidance on ways that you can take the materials that you can use to write the certification. And the certification is not offered by me, but by Microsoft. You can go to Microsoft website, will tell you the type of certification you can write, and you can write the certification. Especially for those that are out of the US, I'll strongly encourage you to look into the certification. Any question so far on the syllabus, on the program, what you're going in for the next 6-7 months?
Yes, so you said something about the company you're going to take. Is it that the certification is so expensive?
No, the certification is not really expensive. Well, the material, well, I've seen certification material for roughly $500. The certifications roughly less than $300, but that's extra cost that the company can pay for you if you get a job, right? Well, I am not saying that certification is a bad thing to do, though, right? But I am just saying that when you are done with this program, certification should be at the back of your mind, but your focus should be on getting a job. If you can combine the two, fine. But if you can, please, I will advise you to go for the job, to focus on getting a job and then get the certification later. 99.99 with 16 nines after the 9 of my students, get their certification after they are working. I don't know of, not necessarily, I have maybe one student that actually had a certification before he or she got a job, right? Most of the time, it's after they're already working. Just to let you know, it's US, but if you're out of the US, you need to know the country that you're on and you know what the value. So this is based on the US standard. Yeah. Question?
Yes. I need to ask a question. I'm still a scholar though. We were talking about the backing up servers, and you use an illustration like maybe you're having a flood here and you're backing up remotely some other place. Does it imply that maybe some organizations might have different remote server, I mean backup server,
yes,
that could be automated in case of disaster?
Yes. Very, very true. So once you get there and you start learning on all this backup strategy, you will realize that backup is never local. It's always going to be remote. I mean, it makes no sense to back up a database locally, because if you back it up locally, the moment the database goes down, and if the disaster is actually flood, fire, or whatever, or natural disaster where the entire data center is gone, your backup is also useless. So most of the time, the backup strategy is implemented in such a way that your backups are safe in a remote location, never locally. Right?
Okay, there could be multiple locations.
Yes, there were multiple locations. You heard about the high availability solutions. That solution will take care of your data present every single time there is a change on your database. That data gets replicated in multiple locations at the same time. And even though it gets replicated in multiple locations, it is still backed up. So companies typically have like plan A. If plan A fails, you have plan B, C, D, or E. Right? So it's really, really hard that all those plans fail at the same time and the company really loses the data. Because the most valuable asset for every single company is the data. If you go to a bank and you ask the bank manager, it is not the money in the safe, it's the data. Because that money in the safe is insured. If you steal it, the insurance will pay for it, but the insurance will not pay for the data if data is gone. So that's why DBAs make a lot of money, because you deal with very sensitive data that holds the company's most valuable asset. That's the most valuable asset. It's not the engineers that you have. It is not the developers that can build better apps for you. It is the data. If you don't have the data, you're out of business. And you are the database administrator. So you know the value that you provide for the company. Your job you might not always be in the forefront where they're giving awards to the best guys. Your name will not always feature there. But if you mess up, the company is in deep, by my words, deep shit. All right. All right. Okay. Let's take a break. It's 9:30. Take a 15 minutes break, and I'll pause the video here. Resume recording. All right. So I need to bring your attention to a couple of websites that you need to follow while you're going through this program. I say a lot of learning that you need to do. I want you to understand that we cannot teach you everything. So you have to do a lot of self-reading also to complement the material that you're getting from us. And these are some of the websites that you need to put yourself comfortable with. Send this one to the chat so you get acquainted with. And I've had this in an interview. Someone has literally asked me in an interview, what are some of the websites that you do follow, right? So I'm putting this in chat, the WhatsApp chat, so you can actually get yourself acquainted with these websites. They're very important. Why? Because if we have to give you everything you need to know, this program will be longer than 2 years. It's already a compressed program, a crash program. So most of you might trying to ask, why is it that some of the programs that you find out there, you get it done in 2 or 3 months? That's not true. If someone really promises you that you're going to get materials worth 5 years of experience in 2 months, that individual is lying to you. Even if they schedule classes every day, you're going to be overwhelmed with the material. It won't give you enough time to assimilate the material. So that's why we space this one out. This website, make good use of them and put them on your list. I know some of you already have some website that you follow, but these are very good websites. Tech Brother is good. MS SQL Trek is good. MS SQL T, W2 School is W3 Schools is very good. Those are good websites that you can always get a lot of tutorial. And then this is the way you should study. Whatever we do here in class, you should actually go online and look for tutorials on that particular topic. Get tutorials on that topic and practice. Because when you do that, it helps you complement the material with what you already have learned here in class, right? So it's very, very important that you really pay attention to this and do that. Okay, so we're going to start off, right? We're going to talk about SQL Server. What is it all about? Why is it even SQL Server? What are we actually learning? This program is Microsoft SQL Server Database Administration. Microsoft SQL Server Database Administration. That is a program that you are going through, and to become a Microsoft SQL Server Database Administrator. Right? There's so many other Microsoft Microsoft SQL Server Database developers, data analysts, and all that, but this will train you to become a Microsoft SQL Server Database Administrator, right? So, what is SQL Server, right? It is a software, yes. It's developed by Microsoft. It's implemented to use in managing corporate database systems. And it is an RDMS, a relational database management system. You hear this a lot, RDMS. RDMS stands for Relational Database Management System. So the first two classes, guys, is going to be a lot of theory. So no hands-on, but you need to get the theory in order to start the hands-on. So there are other relational database management systems that you've heard of, like Oracle, MySQL, NoSQL, Postgres. There's so many other ones out there. But what you need to realize is that Microsoft SQL is the most renowned relational database management system out there. Not because it's powerful, yes, it is powerful, but because it is user-friendly and companies actually need it for managing their databases. Companies go with it because of price, right? Everything that you do with Oracle, you can do it with SQL, but at a factor of 10 lower in price. So a lot of companies nowadays have just suddenly realized that they can literally just hire a DBA instead of giving that database to be managed by an external user. Remember the story I told you that you could actually look at it as your potential, your growth potential, right? Getting a company where you can really manage company's database. Instead of doing that, companies are actually realizing that they can just hire a DBA on-prem. On-prem just simply means that it is in-house, right? We hire a DBA in-house who will manage our databases and pay him amount of money, and it will still be cheaper than getting a company to do that for us or going with Oracle, a database management system. Yeah, I'll get to your question later. Just give me a moment. So SQL has both GUI. So GUI just stands for Guided User Interface. Right?
Excuse me, doctor. You probably need to share your screen.
Oh, what am I sharing?
The picture, sorry.
Oh, that's strange.
No, I'm getting you. I'm seeing you. You have shared your screen, doctor.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry. I was sharing a picture. Okay. All right. I just didn't realize I wasn't sharing my screen. Okay.
Wow, I just knew.
So, all right. So this program, this is called SQL, right? I want you guys to get used to this. This is not SQL as you are used to. We got to say SQL, but it is pronounced as SQL, right? SQL. It is a language. SQL is a language. So when we talk about SQL, it's a language which is actually used by so many relational database management systems out there. Oracle uses SQL. MySQL uses SQL. NoSQL relational database management system like Postgres uses SQL. So it's a language, and SQL stands for Structural Query Language. Structural Query Language. That's what SQL stands for, and it's pronounced as SQL. I want you to get used to the pronunciation, because when you leave this class, you're leaving with 5 years of experience, minimum. For those who are slow, they will leave with 3 years of experience. So you can't go in an interview having 3 years of experience and you're still pronouncing SQL as SQL. It's SQL. All right. So what is it used for, right? We use it to create databases, to maintain databases, and to analyze, report databases, and also transform databases. That's what SQL is used for. Those are the different that's what relational databases are used for. Now, let's talk about the history of it. How did it actually originate from? Yes, now, Abudin, yes, please. Yes.
A question?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just trying to share the screen, but you have done that right.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks. So,
Doctor.
yes, so Barbara is here. So when you have your question, please just throw it in the forum. She either can reply or draw my attention to reply your question, right? All right, okay. Just so we have a flow. So SQL, right, started out from Sybase. Sybase is also another relational database management system that still exists out here. So a bunch of people that were working for Sybase decided to create, to spin off and create Microsoft SQL, right? And when it started, the first release was in 1996, right? It's very important because I have had this asked in an interview, what are the different versions of SQL Server that exist out there, right? It's kind of really funny, the kinds of questions that you can have in an interview, but you definitely get this. So what you're going to realize in this class from all of us is that interview starts from day one. Right now, we're started training you to answer interview questions. So get your pen, please make sure you get an empty exercise books, right? So you can write down as much as you can. Whenever I talk about the interview question, I will really appreciate if you can write it down. So, because I might never have a chance to come back to that because they come because of the topic that I'm teaching. So they get this kind of question, different relational database management system or when different versions of SQL Server. You have the first one that was released was 1996 with 6.5. And we have SQL 7 released 1998. We have SQL 2000, 2005, 2008, 82, R2. Whenever you hear of R2, 28, R2, it just simply means release 2 because Microsoft would have done a lot of development work that had 2 releases done on that same year. So that's why you see the same version, and you can see, even though it was released, that was actually released in 2008, but they still didn't feel like calling it SQL Server 2010. They call it SQL 2008 R2. So you have 2012, 14, 16, 17, and the latest one is 19. What you're going to realize here in SQL Server is the build number, right? Most of the time, this is how you're going to tell if the version of SQL Server you're working on based on the build number. As you can see, 6.5 has 6.5, and you keep going up like that, but you see that the latest one, which is 2019, build number starts with 15. What do I mean by build number? When you guys have fully installed SQL Server on your machine, you will be able to tell what version of SQL Server based on the build number is running. If I might just open one right now, I can show you guys what I'm talking about. Okay, it's loading, so we'll get to that later. Okay, and we talk about addition, right? It's very important that you differentiate between different addition and different versions. Students get confused a lot. What is the difference between an edition of SQL Server and a version of SQL Server? Well, I have just shown you all the different versions of SQL Server. Now, what are the editions of SQL Server that you have out there? Now, I have SQL Server loaded right now. Let me just quickly show you how to get the build number. If you log onto a server, for example, when you guys finally download this and you log onto a server, you always see here on the right side, 14.0.2027.2. This is the build number. And if you go by this table here, you see that this build number with 14 is 2017 version, right? Because of the build number. We're going to come back to that later on to look into that more. But just from that, looking at a server like this, you can easily tell what build number, what version of SQL Server are you working with. Okay. So.
Okay, doctor. Excuse me, sorry for interrupting.
Yes.
So I want to find out, because a number of students are asking if you're actually going to share this. Are we going to be sharing these PowerPoints during this session?
So generally, we don't share this PowerPoint because I know you guys take your notes, and I do send out a video for you. So the PowerPoints, as you can see, there's literally no notes on the PowerPoint. They're just points that help me to explain to you what you really want. Now, that's why we give out the books, because the books actually gives you a detailed explanation if you want to read more. And you can watch the video again if you want to have more and take down a note. It is important. That's why the PowerPoint, I never share the PowerPoint out for students, because it is not necessary. In this video, you see how the PowerPoint slides there. You can stop and do your notes the way you want to. So really, I don't give out the PowerPoint. All right? All right, cool. So now the next thing that we're going to look at is the different edition. And in the books, you have this also on the books, right? So don't worry about that. Everything I shared in this PowerPoint, you can find it in the books that I'm going to share out with you guys. So, so you have these different versions, editions of SQL Server. We have the Enterprise Edition, the Standard Edition, Business Intelligence, Developer, and Express Edition. This is the most expensive edition of SQL Server that you're going to find out there. And this edition of SQL Server, the Enterprise Edition, most companies don't go for this, especially companies that are still struggling in the market and they're still getting into the field of database administrator. So they prefer not to go with the Enterprise Edition because it's quite expensive, and they go with the Standard Edition. But this Enterprise Edition has all the capabilities that SQL Server offers. It has everything. So this is considered as a premium edition of SQL Server. It has everything inclusive, you know, and there is no limitation. There's no limitation. So, and I can just quickly show you here. So this is what Microsoft, this is Microsoft website. This is what Microsoft shows you out here for the prices of the different editions of SQL Server. Because when you finish this and you're going to manage licenses, you should also have this at the back of your mind, the cost of the different licenses. So an Enterprise Edition will cost roughly $14,000. A Standard Edition is roughly $3,000. Standard with client access base is $900. The developer edition is free. Well, like I said in the beginning, you guys in this class will go with the Enterprise Edition. That's a license that every single one of you will get, you know. But when you are working out there, companies who will not go with the Enterprise Edition because it's too expensive, and they will start out with the Standard Edition. And you can see there's a price factor of 3 just by going down to Standard Edition. But the Standard Edition, it is not as robust as the Enterprise Edition. It also offers you a wide range of capability, but there are certain technologies that you will see when we start doing in this class that is limited if you use a Standard Edition of SQL Server. Now you have the Business Intelligence Edition, which is used for business intelligence, and then you have Developer Edition. It's free, but it also—
Just a question, Doc.
Yes.
Yes, just to confirm that I get what you're saying. If I understand what it means, every version of a SQL Server comes in these various editions. Okay, thank you.
Every version has this different edition. So the Developer Edition is identical to Enterprise, but it's mostly used for development work. So no company out there will have a Developer Edition working in their corporate world environment. Nobody. Because it's, first, Microsoft will not be accountable for any problem or any bugs that you have that leads to data loss. So no one will want to use this. And that's why we also don't use this, even though it's free. Right? If you want to, you can download it. It's free, but we don't use it. We use the Enterprise Edition. Now you have the Express Edition, which is really for entry-level products. It's good for learning and for small data-driven applications that you can use it. So these are the different editions of SQL Server that exist for every version of SQL Server that you have out there, right? Okay, now, so tell me some of the reasons. What are some of the reasons why someone will actually decide to install or upgrade a SQL Server, right? Now, there's so many reasons. One, either you are just starting from afresh because it does not exist, right? Or you are doing a software change. Maybe your company was working with an Oracle and we've just decided we need to move to SQL Server. Now we do a fresh new installation, or the company has upgraded the product. They used to have 28 and it then moved to a higher version. They now decide to upgrade. So those are some of the reasons why you need to install or upgrade SQL Server. Now, there's also support that is provided by Microsoft. Every single time Microsoft releases a product, they give you 10 years support. So if most of you getting a job this year, the first primary projects that you will be working on will be upgrading from a different version, from one version to another, because this is 2020, right? All SQL Server that was released 2008 got support stopped end of 2018. So you had a 2019 and 2020. So most companies right now, if you need support, what do I mean by support? Everything that you have here, when you buy a license from Microsoft, like what you have right now. Now, Microsoft gives you what is called software assurance. If you have a problem and you cannot solve that problem, you can open a ticket in your Microsoft Center and we will solve that problem for you. Now, that is limited for 10 years. So that's why you see a lot of companies migrating from 2008 because it's out of support. And what Microsoft tells you is that even though we are out of support, we can still offer you support if you need it. But the price is very, very high. So companies don't want that. They would just prefer to upgrade to a higher version of SQL Server rather than trying to stick with the support. But it's not in every situation where you can upgrade. Let's say, for example, we have an application that works for the company, and that application is in charge of opening doors. Whenever you walk towards a door, it opens electronically. Well, there is the database that holds that data, right? As you're going in, out, that information is stored in the database. But if that application has been working well for the last 20 years, I mean, the company does not depend on that to make business. It's just an added advantage to the company. But now, if the company that actually made those doors, the application for this door, has gone out of business and they're no longer in existence, and your company wants now to move to a higher version, they will be stuck with that old version because that company is no longer in business. And there's absolutely no reason to upgrade, because when you upgrade, there is no guarantee that that application will still work. So they will be stuck with an old application. So it's not every time that when Microsoft product gets out of support that you have to upgrade. Sometimes you're stuck with old version just because it does not support that, right? Okay, now when you guys get to installing SQL Server, right, there are minimum requirements that you need to have in order for SQL Server to be installed on any machine. And we already talked about the fact that you should have at least a Pentium 4 or AMD type processor, which most laptops already meets this specification. There's really no new laptop or any laptop from 2018 and above that will not meet this. Also, this processor speed, the memory should be at least 4 gigs and above. The hard drive. So when you install SQL Server, you are installing what is called a database engine. The data files, replication, all these require roughly this. I mean, this is small. If you want to install SQL Server integration services, which we're going to come back to this later on, you still need this. So all these components need roughly 2 gigabytes of storage on your disks to install. So this is something that you will definitely, most computers have it. Now let's just go back here and look at the editions again. Edition of SQL Server. we've talked about the different editions and different versions. SQL Server, the word SQL Server, it is an application, but it has an independent server that functions just like a server itself. So which means it's an application that sits on a Windows server, right? SQL Server sits on a Windows server. So when you need to install SQL Server on your machine, you need to make sure that the Windows server is as close as possible to the operating system. So the SQL Server is as close as possible to the operating system. When I talk about Windows Server, I'm talking about the operating system, the OS, the operating system of that server. Why am I saying this? I'm not saying that if you don't, it will not work, but performance will be your problem. So if you want to install SQL Server 2008, you should try as much as possible to have an operating system that has a 2008. It could be a 2008 Enterprise, Standard, or Data Center. And now let's come back to operating system. The operating system, just like SQL Server Edition, operating system also have their own edition. You have for the servers, right? Most of you have computers and you're talking about Windows 10, Windows 10 Pro, Windows Home, and so on. Those are users, right? Microsoft has those different kinds of operating systems. So, but when you go into server, which is corporate world, you have the type of edition that you have will be the Enterprise Edition for the operating system. You have the Standard Edition, and most recently now, you start having what is called the Data Center Edition. There are more, but these are the most common ones that you face out there. So what am I saying? That if you are installing SQL Server Enterprise, the Standard or Developer 2008, you should try as much as possible for the operating system to have also a 2008 Windows Server Edition. Because if you decide to install a SQL Server 2016 on an operating system, OS stands for operating system, which 2008 operating system, it will work, but performance will be a big hit for you. So best practices, which is something that you always hear in an interview, what are some of the best practices that you implement when installing SQL Server? What are some of the best practices that you should implement when installing SQL Server? You want to make sure that the operating system and SQL Server, right? So Windows Server and SQL Server should be as close as possible.
Yes.
Right? So I can go with, you can see here, a SQL Server 2012 R2 with Windows Server R2 go with SQL Server 2014. Windows Server 2016 go with SQL Server 2016. I can also install 2016 on the 2012. There's no problem. It will still work. But the more I go down the list, the higher the risk that the performance will be a major problem. Okay. Now, this is a survey that's randomly performed nowadays by, when you start reading those websites, you will see that these are some of the surveys that companies generally provide. And this survey, people were asked to enumerate the SQL Server versions that they are still using in their environment. Now, this should help you understand why we are doing this class with the version of SQL Server that we're using in this class. And out of roughly 2,000 people that responded to that survey, less than 6% actually, well, 6 people actually, not 6%. 6 people actually reported that they are still using SQL Server 2008. And we understand why. It's out of support. Companies don't want that anymore. Now, 10 are still using 2008 R2, and then you start going to that. So you can see here that the majority of the companies out there are using 2016 and 17, right? 2019 just came out. Companies don't always rush to use the latest version. Why? Because it just came out. We don't know what the issues that it will face. Microsoft is still gathering feedback in order to release what is called a service pack, which you guys are going to learn that later on. So that's why you see that there's a small percentage of companies out there are using 2019. And we stand a better chance to start this program with 2019 because we are going to make good use of the newer features that exist. But there are projects in this class that will force you to go all the way down to 2014 and move back up. We will not do anything with 2012, even though it has some similarities, but we move from 2014 and above. So those are the kind of things that you see here. So when you're learning something, it's always good to have an idea what are the things that we do out there. All right. Now, when we are done with this, we are going to talk about instances, right? Terminologies. When we start learning this thing, these 2 chapters in this class, the first 2 classes is just theory because you need to understand a lot of terminology. You will hear a lot. An instance of SQL Server. What is an instance of SQL Server? An instance is an installation of SQL Server of its own. So let me see if there's any question that requires my attention before I move on. Let me see there. See, there was a question here. It says, can we install and run more than 1 edition of SQL Server at a time? Yes. Oh, okay. Barbara already responded to that. Okay. Yeah, we can do that. All right. So just make sure if I don't respond to your question, if it's here on the chat, Barbara, please remind me. Let me address that. Okay. Okay. So an instance of SQL Server is an installation of SQL Server. You have an installation. So an instance is an exact copy of the same software when you install. So when we start the installation, what we are installing is actually an instance, right? So if we install n times, then we have n applications. So we install 20 instances, and 20 times we are having 20 instances. And there's one thing that you're going to realize here, that we have 2 different types of instances. And that's an interview question. What are the different types of instances do you know? There are 2 only. There is a default instance and a name instance. As simple as that. We have a default instance and a name instance. Now, you can only have 1 default instance installed on a machine, right? So even though you can install multiple name instances, you can only have 1 default instance installed. And you can have up to, included, the name instance, the default instance, 50 name instances installed on a machine. That's the limit. But there is no company that will ever get to that limit because, 1, there are so many reasons why you should never install that many instances. Now, let me give you guys an example. Let's say you work for a company. Your job is get contracts and host databases in your company. And then you decide that, okay, I don't want to buy more servers. I'm just going to buy 1 server and I'm going to do 50 instances because Microsoft said I can install 50. And then I'm going to give instance 1 for Bank of America, instance 2 for Chase Bank, instance 3 for Wells Fargo, and so on. Now, if Bank of America app has a problem and the only solution to fix that problem is to restart the server, what happens to Wells Fargo and Chase? They are all going to be affected because they are all running on the same server. So because of that, even though you have that capability, it is not important. It's not best practice to have all those instances installed on 1 machine. It's better to create a virtual machine, which you guys are going to learn later on, and then have single installation so that if Bank of America has a problem and the solution is restart the server, I am only going to restart the server that has Bank of America application running. And the other guys will not be affected. So that's why it's not a best practice to have so many instances installed. For all my experience in this field, I have never seen a company that has more than 4 instances on 1 server. Some companies do it, but I have personally not seen it. Most of the companies that go, they have one instance installed, and most of that is always the default, right? And as I said, you can only have one default.
Doctor.
Yes.
In my environment, we have named instances.
Okay.
And so one server hosts up to 3 instances. We have default, we have internal, we have published. And the reason why this was done was because they said that named instances, that when you have a named instance, it's some kind of more secure because the port numbers are, you choose to make the port numbers not the port numbers are, yes, the port numbers are static. So if hackers hack into the environment, it's going to be difficult for them to guess the port number as compared to default instances, which we know that they have a static port number, which is 1433. Yes. But I like to say that the named instances are kind of disadvantageous because they tend to share resources. They fight with resources on the server. You know, you have a server that has like 16 gigabytes of memory, and you need to follow best practice by allocating at least 80% of the memory to SQL Server. You see that some of those servers will be slow. So personally, I don't recommend named instances because of performance issues. That's what I'm actually facing now with those named instances. And I'm currently recommending that they go with default instances to solve that performance problem.
That's very correct, very correct. And every recommendation that you have here are things that you will need in your job environment. Because when you come in, your job as a DBA is not just to come and fix things. Your job is also to provide them with some recommendation. If you see something that's wrong, say something, right? You can tell them, okay, I've been in, I understand that you can do this, and if you do this, you're going to improve on your performance, right? Because you're learning real stuff here that companies out there really need it. And you can see this. Name instances, like we say, when we start doing installation, you will hear what is called a port number. Everything in IT that makes connections go through port numbers. You have port numbers, and a name instance have a static port number, which is quite difficult for an outsider to guess. If I just sit right there and say, guess a combination of 5 numbers, and you don't tell me, and I have to figure out what was the combination of 5 numbers that you thought of, it's much difficult for me. But default instances have their port number, which is known by everybody. It's 1433. I've once been asked this question on an interview. What is the port number for a default instance? Well, you guys will not know. I did not know that answer by that time. I'm telling you, I did not know it. I knew it, but at that moment in that interview, I just could not remember it. You know, that's one question that I had in an interview. I will always think about it because it was really funny. That's something that's simple. I'm sitting there claiming that I have 5 years of experience as a database administrator, and then the guy, we've gone through a very nice interview, everything looks well, and then he just said, by the way, what's the default port number of SQL Server? My goodness. I was like, Jesus, I've forgotten this. I just didn't know it. My mind just went blank. But I mean, I finally got the job. I came back for a second round of interview. The guy knew that I know it, but I just forgot. But his first question was, what is the port number of SQL Server? I just laughed. You know, you cannot have that question twice and you still make the same mistake, you know. So, but anyway, so you can see here that for older version of SQL Server, that's 2000 and below.
Sorry, I'm interjecting. What's the port number?
Well,
what's the port number of is it a default instance or a SQL Server? What is it?
Well, the port number for default instance for SQL Server is 1433.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's 1433. Yeah, it's default. You cannot change that port number. It's always going to be 1433. So, okay. So you see here that with older version of SQL Server, the maximum number of instances that you can install is 16, while for 2005 and above, the maximum is 50. Like I said, you can never get to this 50 because that's a lot. You don't need it. Okay, now what are some of the advantages of having an instance? What are some of the advantages? Well, you can install different versions in one machine. That was a question that somebody asked today. Can you install different versions? Yes, you can have Enterprise Edition 2000 and 2014, 2016 on the same machine, as well as editions. You can have enterprise, standard, and development edition on a single machine because of this instance level. It separates itself from one another. And another advantage of it is that it reduces costs. Like I mentioned earlier on, you can decide and have 3 contracts for 3 clients. Instead of buying 3 servers, you put them on 1 server, but just installing 3 different instances. Why am I saying that? It is because when you have an instance, there's a when you guys start looking at security in SQL Server, you see that there are 4 different levels of security. 1, for you as a hacker to breach in and steal the data, right? You should be able to authenticate yourself at the server level, at the server level, which means you should be able to guess what is the username and the password of that server to get in. So once you are inside the server, now you have SQL Server installed. So you should be able to also guess, because there is another level of security at the level of an instance. So you should be able to also guess what are the logins on this instance, the username and the password. So you should be able to break through the instance. Now, when you are done with that level, you should also, at the level of a database, be able to authenticate, get through that. And the last level is actually the schemas. So these are 4 different layers of security that you have to navigate yourself through to be able to really get to the data. And we will see that later on as we get through this program. So it reduces costs because you can do that, because the security is at the level of instance. You can literally have all those users connecting to the same server with different instances. Well, you can separate between production, development, and testing environment separately. Now, because you're new here, we have to explain all these different terminologies to you. What is a development edition environment, production, and testing? Every company you have out there, if the company does not have it, you need to recommend to them. You need to have at least 3 different environments. And when I talk about an environment, I am talking about a section where people can log onto and use it as a playing field. You have developers in your environment. Developers, what they do is that they are constantly developing something new. If your job is you are trying to come out with an application that will be used to compete with MoneyGram, let's say Express Union, send money to Africa or all over the world, right? The first thing you need to do is you're going to design a database. Yes, but a database does not have a user interface where users can log onto. So how does data flow from the outside world all the way into the database? Now, let me show you guys this based on an example. Because the flow of data is very, very important for you to understand how data flows. Now, let me get a whiteboard, and can you see this whiteboard?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so let's see this. Okay, so on this whiteboard, so we have here, now on this level, we have here, so you guys will see, and after that we have this layer. Okay, so this is the web server. When you hear of web server, this is where the web server sits. This is how data flows into the database. Now this is the web.
Because I can't see.
We are not seeing it, sir.
You guys can see it?
Yes, sir.
Let me try one more time. Share, whiteboard, and share. No?
Now,
Okay, I can see it now.
Everybody can see the whiteboard now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. So this is the whiteboard to draw it. I need to get a real board because this one gives me a very funny handwriting. Okay. So this is the way data flows. So when you have a user out here, let's call this user. You have somebody like Milton who has just created a bank account with Bank of America, and he has been granted permission to connect to the database. So he sits out here and he needs to connect to the database. Now the database is, come on. Oh, shit. The database is all the way down here. So now the first thing that happens when you log online, www.bankofamerica.com, right? What you are connecting to is never the database. So this is here, application server, app. I'm just going to call it app server. App server. And this is the database server. Database server. Okay, so now at no instance will this guy sitting outside there as a client of Bank of America ever have direct connection to the database. It will never happen. So what happens is when you have create account at the bank and they give you a bank account and log in credentials, when you are logging in, what you are doing, you are making connection to the web server. And this web server sometimes also has a database, web server database, right? So it calls connections of all the individuals out there. Now, when you connect to a database, so a web server, for example, this web server has what? An ID that is only recognized by the application server. And this application server will only allow that connection, no other connection. So we could have here 1,000 clients that are logging into Bank of America because they have login password, credentials and password, but all they're logging into the web server. Now, when they log into the web server authenticates because the web server has a database and the credentials are stored there. So what happens there is, when the information is on the web server, how do you finally get to the database? Now, on the web server, there is a particular ID that is recognized by the app alone. And there's the firewall that blocks this one. There's a firewall here that makes sure that nobody gets through this except this guy. This is the only guy that can go through. So he makes connection to the application server, and the application server checks the credential and say, hey, I know you. You are authorized to log on. Now he connects to the application server. And now on this application server, there is another ID. Let me call this ID 2. This is ID 1. This ID 2 also has a connection to the database. And there's another level of protection here that makes sure that nobody, if this ID 1 tries to connect directly, it will be blocked. If this guy here tries to connect here, it will be blocked, right? You can only connect to the web server. The web server makes the connection to the application server, and there's this particular ID that makes the connection to the database. So for you to actually steal the data, you should be the smartest guy out there that will impersonate Milton's account to get into the web server. And once you are inside the web server, you impersonate this identity 1. There's another guy here that has identity core 1. Once you're in here, you impersonate this guy again to connect to the database. That is how information flows through the database. So when you actually have these instances installed, what you are doing here is that you are actually providing a level of security where you have certain accounts that are only allow those accounts to connect to the database, right? So that's how you should start right now, start visualizing how data flows from the outside world all the way to the database, right? So as a database administrator, where does your duty end? You will never be called up for any problem that has to do with the application, except you are a database administrator and also application server at the same time. Some companies will require that you do that. Anything that has to do with a web server, here we have different types of job that exist. That's what I'm saying. Into this field, you start seeing a lot of jobs. Here, there are people out there whose job is just web developers or web administrator. Their job is they take care of the web server. Here, there are people here and their job is app developer. They just take care of the application server. Now, this is where your job is. Database administrator. You are an app database administrator. There's app administrator, web administrator, and there is a database administrator. So when you get into the field and you start seeing, you like how the applications are connecting, you like the way, you can start learning how this application, how to manage an application. And maybe you can finally get up and become a web or an app administrator, you know, or a web administrator if you like programming. So when a problem happens in a corporate world, someone just calls you, hey, Bank of America app is down, I cannot connect. Do you think the first call will go to DBA? When you have, every company has their, how do you call that?
Customer care.
Customer care, as well as their IT service desk, right? The service desk, the help desk. When you get a call, when you go online and look for that hotline, you are never going to see the DBA's number there. You're going to call the customer care or the hotline. Now the hotline, the guy that works for the hotline understands who are the web developers. They're going to contact the web developer, say, hey guys, the app is down, we don't know what's going on. The web team will quickly check their web and find out if the web is online or not. If it's offline, they'll quickly bring it back online to resolve the problem. Now, if the problem is not resolved at the level of the web server, now they will try, based on this ID, because the web administrator guys will have access, they will know these credentials, the username and the password for this ID. They will try to make a connection to the database to see if they can connect, sorry, not to the database, to the app server. They will try to see if they can connect to the app server. Now, if they are able to connect to the app server, now the problem now is no longer on their level, and they will hand it over to the app team. Now the app team will try to connect to the database. If they cannot connect to the database, this will be a guy that will call you. They will call you, hey Dennis, users are complaining that they cannot connect to the database. We've just checked that the web server is up, the app server is up, but we cannot make a connection to database. Can you check a level of database? Now you come in there, check to the database, and we are going to go through all the steps that you should check whenever you get that kind of a call. What are you supposed to look for? All right. I don't know if any of you have ever worked in a collection agency. You will know how important it is when the collection agency server goes down for 1 minute. You know how much money everyone is panicking, right? It's because you host something that makes a lot of money. So this is how everything connects as level of in the corporate world. All right, let's see a question here. Let's see. Please, can you elaborate more on what a default server is and how it's function and why is it preferable to a named instance? All right, there's no default server, but default instance, right? A default instance. So now let me show you guys example. I'm a little bit fast forwarding with this now to show you this. When you guys have successfully installed your instance, you will have what is called, when you go to connect to a database, you have the server name. And if you browse down here, you can see that there are different instances. So here, you see that I have 1, 2, 3 named instances. And one is—
Sorry, we cannot screen. Please, can you share the screen?
I'm not sharing the screen because I stopped sharing and I forgot to share this one. All right. Okay, so if you want to connect, this is a little bit fast forwarded, but we'll come back to this later on. You can see here that under database engine, I have these different instances. Whenever you have a server name, an instance name that starts with the server name \, and remember, I said \/ is also called whack in the IT world. So when you hear someone say whack, we're talking about the \, right? So a server name, whack, and a name. This name here after the whack is the name instance name. That is the name instance. Now, when you have a default instance, it just looks like that. The default instance is always the computer name. So when you install a default instance, it's easy to manage. There are a lot of things that we'll do in this class that works well when you have a default instance. Now, when you have a default instance, for example, now if I open Configuration Manager, for example, which is something that you guys will see it when you finally install SQL Server, you see that on Configuration Manager, this is where you do all the configurations. You can see here that I have a server, SQL Server, and whose name is MS SQL Server, which stands for Microsoft SQL Server. This name is default. You cannot change it, right? So the name is known by everybody. You cannot change it. And the port number is known also by everybody, because if I click on this, go to instances and scroll down, you see that the port number is 1433. So everyone knows this. And hackers also know that. So it's easy to break into a system that has a default instance than a name instance. So a name instance is much more secured, but it has more issues because it shares resources. Because here, now, if I'm connecting to this server, all this is running on the same machine. So if all of them are running, they are sharing the same resources, right? And this.
So can you go back to that configuration manager again? Let's see.
Yes, here.
How did you get to that?
Well, I just click. I went here. We'll come back to this later on.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
We'll click here and double click here, and then I can scroll down on IP addresses, and you see this is the port number the SQL Server is communicating with outside world. A port number, guys, is like a key. If you don't know the port number, you cannot connect. And all applications that will later on connect to this database needs to have that port number. So I can guess if it's a default, and I know the port number cannot change. But if it's a name instance, the port number is different, but it shares the resources, and it can lead to performance issues. So we'll look about that later on. So you can see here, when I try to connect to an instance, the port, if it's a default, all you need to do is put the instance name here, and then you click on connect, and then we connect. And you can see databases, security, and all this beautiful stuff that we're going to talk about in the course of this class. All right, so let me stop here, and then we'll take time to do a couple of hands-on, get yourself prepared.
So Doc, what would be a problem when the resources are shared? Why is it a problem?
It's a problem because if I want to check the resources of this computer that I have, let's say in this class, I prefer to call your computers as servers. So you have to get used to the terminology servers. Now, your computer in front of you is a server. Now, if I want to check the resources of my own server, I go on this, right? And I click here. I type system information, right? If I type system information, I'll have, oh, where is it? I have this that pops up. So these are the resources that this computer has. And you can see here, I have this amount of installed physical memory. I have this as processors that I have. So, which means that whenever you do a SQL Server installation, because it is a server, you need to give his own amount of resources that he will be using, right? So, because you cannot just leave one server to use all these 24 gigabyte of memory that a computer has. Look, even with that SQL Server running, look at how much available memory I have. I only have 9.9. Where's the rest, right? There are processes running on this server that needs that. So if you don't limit how much resources a server can use, it's going to deprive other instances from using it. Or because you've limited it and it needs more, it's going to be craving for more resources. Let's say the resources that it needs is just the memory. It's going to need more memory. And because you've installed multiple ones on the server, it will now deprive the other ones from using that. That's why it's important that you move them to other instances. It's much preferable to have just one single instance running per server than having multiple. But it saves cost, like we said, and the company can go with that. So if you're running multiple instances, just be aware that the workload that each instance runs needs to be reflected by the server overall resources. right? Okay.
Can I come in, Doctor?
Yes, please, come in.
Okay, so what you're saying is that because the default server, the default instance is allocated its own resources independently, it doesn't have to compete with the other instances, right?
No, no. If you, for example, if you install a default instance on the same server with other name instances, like we said, you can only have one default instance and multiple name instances. If you have them on the same instance, that default is also running on the same operating system and is going to also share with the rest. So when you hear that companies only do default instances, literally when you log onto that server, you only see one instance installed.
Okay.
Not multiple. If you have default and name instance on the same server, they will still eventually share the resources.
Okay.
Yeah.
So another question I have is,
yes,
you said the port number for Microsoft SQL Server is 1433.
For default, yes.
Yes. Is it that all the versions and the editions, they have that same port number?
Yes.
Okay.
They have the same, right?
Port number.
Any question?
Doctor.
Yes.
Excuse me. I mean, Jarvis, what is it Jarvis? I mean, let me say Sama. Let me not cut my Sama was saying that he asked if the default port number for, I mean, the port number for SQL Server, or like him to always differentiate and say that the default port number for SQL Server is 1433 because those name instances will always have dynamic port numbers that you have to make them static based on what the company tells you. So I just wanted to correct him by saying that it's a default port number and not the port number.
Yes.
Thanks for that correction.
You're welcome.
Right. All right. And we're going to once installation, where I'm going to walk you guys through how you can allocate all those. There are post-installation changes that you need to do every single time you install SQL Server on a machine. You need to do all those kinds of things, right? And those are the things like changing port numbers, making port numbers static, and so on. Okay. All right. So let's just do this. I want you guys to just go and look for your system information. Let's just go through this and see what you have as far as resources. So in this class, whenever we talk about resources, server resources, what are we talking about? We're talking about the processor, the memory, and the disks, right? Hard drive disks. Those are the resources. Those are the main resources that you're going to be dealing with. So when you are managing your resources in the server, you are managing these kinds of things: the memory, the processor, and the disks, right? So the resources that you have available. So here, you're going to see the resources that you have. I do have a 4-core. My operating system is Windows 10 Pro, right? Most of you might have 10 Home, which is fine. We will upgrade it later on when we need it. And you can see the install physical memory here. Who here does not have?
Okay, I have a question.
Is there anyone here that has less than 16 gigabytes of memory? Can you check that?
Yeah.
You have less than 16?
12.
12.
12. 12.
Okay. 12 is manageable, but we will still need to upgrade it.
So I can upgrade it. I can now upgrade my memory.
It's very easy to do it, but you don't need to do it right now. All right?
How do you check, Doc?
We just need to upgrade it. You just need to buy an external RAM. Open the backup. Do you have a laptop or desktop?
No, it's a laptop.
Okay.
Laptop.
We'll open the back of the laptop. Daniel, I have to mute you, okay? We'll open the back of the laptop and just feed it there. It's just like a USB. Just plug it there. It's very easy. You know, it's not difficult to do that.
So it's to buy another RAM. Is that what it's saying?
Yes, you definitely have to buy another RAM. It's not a software. It's a hardware. That's a hardware component. Okay.
I have a question here, Doctor.
Yes.
Yes. So I was asking, since we're talking about the default instance and the
name instance,
and we're talking also of the RAM and everything, the resources. Yeah. Knowing fully well that the default instance conflicts with the name instance to share the resources, is there a possibility to, because I see here your resources, you have a 27 gig of virtual memory. So can't you like remedy this situation by using this virtual memory or the virtual disk?
No, the thing is this. whatever you do in SQL Server, right? For example, let me show you this. You log on to SQL Server. When you right click on that instance and you select properties of that instance, you see memory, right? Every instance has its memory that it uses, and you have to allocate that memory once you're done with the installation. So you can see here, it doesn't matter whether there are only 10 name instances with no default, each single instance will need to have its own memory. And you can see here, this is a default value. When you leave it like this, maximum server memory, this value is default. It means that this instance called STG, which stands for staging, can take as much memory as you want from the server, which is the operating system itself, right? It can, if it needs more, keep taking it. Okay, now what happens if we've just checked here and it shows me that I only have this amount of memory? What happens if this guy really needs 30? Or let's say it needs 20. So it means that it's going to take all that 20 because it needs it. And if on that server, you have 2 instances installed, for example, like this one, this is a default and this is a name. What if the default also needs 5? This guy has taken 20. The server only has 24. What happened? It's going to deprive this guy from running. And besides, even if the server only has 24, this guy cannot have 20 because there's not enough. So what should happen here is that if you need to install more than 1 instance on the server, you need to make sure that you check the server and the amount of load, the workload that will be performed on that SQL server should be reflected based on this. So it means you have to step it up, improve, buy a server that has a larger memory or larger processor to be able to handle that workload coming in as a result of multiple instances.
Okay, Doc, I'm saying this because yesterday I had an issue with the memory.
Yes.
So I was trying to deploy a server, but I didn't have enough resources. So now I went, I extended my memory. I extended the virtual memory to 45 gig. And then I was also trying to deploy like 300 servers, but it was requesting me at least 800 gig of disk of hard drive. I went equally, I created a virtual disk. And later, I went now, I redirected a part of the memory so that the servers can carry the memory from the virtual side. So that was my question. And actually, I was able to do that.
Yeah.
So instead of using the physical memory itself, it went instead, I redirected the part and it went instead of carrying it from the virtual memory that I created.
Okay, but you see that this virtual memory is not unlimited, right? It's also limited, right? So, which means that even if you did do that,
please, what is the virtual memory?
Well, all right.
Virtual memory.
So, all right.
I don't understand.
Okay, so on a server, what you have here, you have the physical memory, which is actually what is there on the server. So if you open that server, right, and you open that hard drive, what you're going to see is that physical memory. That is what you actually have in the.
That's the RAM. Is that the RAM?
Yeah, the memory is the RAM. That's the RAM.
Yeah.
Okay. Touch and feel.
Yeah, that's the RAM. The random access memory. That's what you will see if you open the back of the laptop. You see that. Okay. Now, computers have another technology that they can enable what is called hyper-threading, in which it will trick your computer to feel like it has more than what it really had there, right? And for that reason, you can actually increase the memory of the server. And that's why we call it a virtual memory, right? It's really not the memory that you see when you get in there, but the logically, right? It can work based on that. But if you open it, what you see is the physical memory of the computer.
Okay, but you cannot save, nothing is stored as in permanently stored on the virtual memory or the RAM.
Yes. Right? But first of all, the memory will not store any information. It's temporal, right? Everything that you store on the memory is temporal, and it helps you for cache. Computer use what is called caching, C-A-C-H, cache, which means that it can temporarily, while it's doing all the processing work, it can temporarily store information on the memory. That's what we call random access memory, right? So it can, and because of that, it speeds up the rate at which information is processed on the computer. Right? Okay. So, all right. So with that, I mean, like I said, Romeo, this is also limited. So even if you do that, you still have that limitation. The fact that you have this, the more number of instances that you install has to be reflected based on what the computer has as far as resources are concerned. Right? You're going to see here, even when we start creating virtual machines and we allocate memory to it, it will still get to a point where you try to start your computer, it's just failing because it's complaining of memory. Otherwise, we can go infinite number of, we just spin it up, make it big, and we can use it without any issue. All right, so what I wanted you to see here is you need to look at the memory and look at here you have a
quick question, Doc.
Username, yes.
Okay, you earlier said there's a possibility for us to increase the RAM of our computer, right?
That's right.
Okay. When we're doing that increase, is it the virtual memory that we're increasing or the actual RAM?
No, the actual RAM. That's the physical memory you are increasing.
Okay, and the virtual memory, is it actually usable? If we need to go beyond the RAM memory, can we use the virtual memory?
Well, you cannot, you can use it based on the application, the logic that you have on your computer, on the application that uses it. But when you actually increase your memory, what you are actually doing is that you are increasing the physical memory. That's what you are increasing. This one, install physical memory. That's what I need to see. All right. Okay. So, so what I want you to do right now before you leave the class is I want you guys to change your computer names. Some of you have bought new computers. The names might be funny. I want you guys to do that before we leave the class today. And to change your computer name, if you have already changed it, don't do the exercise. But if you haven't, please go ahead and change your computer name. To change your computer name, you just need to right-click on the start key, right-click, and you select System. And when the system pops up, rename this PC. Please give a user-friendly name here. Don't give a space, one name with no space, right? If you have Dennis Kiawi, it should not be Dennis space Kiawi. It should be Dennis Kiawi at once, or just put Kiawi. Put a simple name here because most of the script that we write here, if you have a script that requires a computer name, I don't want you to have a computer name that has long name that you might not remember. Give a simple name. When you do that and click next, it will require you to restart your computer. That will be it for today.
Hello, Doc.
Yes.
I just want to add something to what you said about RAM increase.
Yes, please.
I just if you want to increase the RAM of your laptop, you want to know if it has 2 ports. Like Chief Obodium was saying that his laptop has 12.
Yes. So
he has to find out if that 12 is actually 444, which means his laptop has 3 ports.
Yes.
Making 444, or it's just one port making that 12. Because my laptop had 8 gig, so I had to increase it to 16. But the 8 gig was actually 4. That's it has two ports. So I went and bought 2 8 to make it 16. So he has to take note of that before he goes out there and buy RAM.
That's very true. And let me show you here, also based on my own example, what happened when I wanted to increase my RAM. You saw that I have 24, right? When I wanted to increase it, I bought a 16 gigs. I was hoping to have a 32 gigs RAM. I didn't check that, right? So when I did that, what happens is that when I open the back of my laptop, I realize that it's 16 gigs, but it's two ports of 8, making 16. That's how I ended up having 24, because I had to take 1 8 out and replace it with a 16, giving it a 24 gigs. So, but there are websites here that you can check the requirement, the specifications of your laptop before you buy the RAM. You don't just buy it, because not every RAM would fit on every computer. So you need to run that. It will scan the laptop. Crucial.com is a very good website I use all the time. Crucial.com will scan your laptop and tell you exact model that you need to buy that will fit on that laptop. So you know that when you are buying it, that's exactly what will fit on the laptop. All right, let me stop here. It's 11 o'clock. If you have any question, feel free to throw it in the forum to answer the question.